Hi everybody, my name is Sherry. Welcome to my stamp studio. Today I have another card that I'm going to do for you that's going to use one of the sets that I'm going to use in my upcoming online class. So you just have a couple more days to register for it. Registration ends I think the 21st. I should read my own emails, right? But it's the Art of Stamping Christmas edition. So I'm going to show you the 3 sets that I will be using, and then when you take my online classes, you can either get just the videos and the PDFs, you can get just the card supplies, and this time the card supplies do include the Pearlized enamel effects, which I'm using on today's card, and the gilded leafing, because we're going to do 6 projects, 3 different stamp sets, and then one of each project will use a stamp set, one will use the Pearlized effects, and one will use the gilded leafing, and we'll kind of do some fun techniques. Other stuff as well, because it is the art of stamping, so it's not going to be any just ink and punches. It's not that kind of class. So I'm going to show you the sets, and all of these have videos up. So the first one is the Christmas lights set, and I will be using the dies too, so you do need a die cut machine in this class. So here are the cards that I already have on my channel. This one just uses the glimmer paper, a super fast card. It is embossed. So that one's kind of pretty. And then this one uses the Pearlized effects, which I'm going to use on today's card. Super pretty. Then the other one that I'm going to use is the Leaves of Holly. And I was so excited that this came off back order, so I would be able to use that one. And then both of these are Art of Stamping in my Art of Stamping series as well. So they're not up. None of them are hard. It's just that they're just not basic stamping. We're going to do some fun stuff. So that's those, and that's the Leaves of Holly. And you can get the stamp sets if you buy the stamp sets as an add-on. Then I pick up your shipping and handling and tax as a perk of doing the class. The one I'm going to use today is Peace to You. It goes together well with the Hope and Peace set. So this is kind of a combo. This one doesn't have a die. So today's card, if you're a new stamper and you don't have a ton of supplies, this is how I started stamping, with heat embossing, and that's what we're going to use today. So very minimal supplies, no die cut machine. If you're just watching this video for a quick Christmas card idea, this would fit that bill. And then these are other ones that are already up on my channel that you can watch where I've used these sets. So I'm going to use the church set again today, and this is on that gold distressed paper as well. It's a really pretty effect with this stamp set. So let's get going. So for the star of today's show, not only we're going to use the Pearlized enamel effects, but I'm going to use this fun snowflake specialty paper. So when you get this paper, I've done several videos with it. It has 3 different designs, and then each of the designs, kind of like my class, has 2 different looks. So one is the hologram look and the other is the flocked look. So if you were doing this card, you could easy peasy use any of the pieces. They are the ones that have just the dot snowflakes, and then 2 of the other designs have larger snowflakes. And you can see it in the catalog. I'll put a list down below the video of what I'm using. Then, oh my goodness, I went back and forth on what color to mount this on, and I ended up just going white. Basic white cardstock, so it has that classic Christmas feel. It would look pretty on some lavender. It would look pretty, again, mounted on basic gray. If you could use smoky slate instead of basic gray, you could use gray granite instead of basic gray. The options are really endless. And the nice thing is you can kind of switch it around if you're making them. Because sometimes when I'm making multiples of one card, I get a little bit bored. So you could use copper embossing powder instead of the silver. You could use gold and kind of switch it up with the other pieces. When you're not using the holographic one, then that opens it up to some more options for your embossing powder. So just a half a sheet of white, and then we're gonna put this on here. See, it looks different on the different colors, and because it's hologram, it has that purple tinge to it, even a kind of a sea foam when you swirl it around the lights. I decided for this one to keep it just classic silver and white for Christmas. So this is basic gray, and then you're going to need a Versamark. And again, when I stamped, I probably stamped for a good 3 or 4, maybe 5 years before I had any colored inks. All I had was a Versamark. So if you're new, this is right up your alley. So I'm going to stamp the church scene. You could do the same one with the nativity, so you could have 2 going at once if you're mass producing. You just want to make sure on this one, especially because it's got so much flat space, that you have ink everywhere. So the Versamark is just sticky, and then I cut this so it was just bigger then the stamp. It kind of helps you line it up. If you are doing multiples, then just fill a whole sheet of paper and then just trim them with scissors. This is one of those ones where it would be hard to make it not straight. And then make sure you've pressed everywhere. So on a large stamp like this, I like to make sure that I get all 4 corners and then go back into the middle. You could use your Stamparatus if you find that you're having a hard time with it. That looks pretty good. And then for this one, I debated about putting, here's the thing. I love the words in the other set that match this. But it was anything larger was going to cover up more of that beautiful holographic background. So I went with a tiny strip of words so we could have words on the front of the card, but then also not lose the paper that's the specialty paper. Then you can put one of the larger sentiments on the inside of your cards. If you're going to do that, then fold them all like this, stamp them on the Versamark, and then emboss those all in silver, and they'll be done quickly. So I do have the silver embossing powder. I've already poured some in here. Forgot to put it back after I did my last one. So just add that on there. This one time I will pour some more on it. If you're doing the class, I highly recommend that you get the embossing tool kit because we'll be doing some embossing. It's just nice to have this to catch everything. And you're going to need the heat and stick, which also can go in here. Now, if you haven't done a lot of heat embossing, the silver on gray is a really good option to be able to see it turn. So always make sure you give it another little smack like that, and then you can see it takes it all out of. And don't be afraid of hitting it too hard. As long as your Versamark pad is nice and heated, nice and wet, everything will stick. And then just start in one spot, and you'll see it turn. Leave it there till it turns, and when it turns, just move it along. This will ensure that you don't have any spots that the powder brushes off of. This design's super nice because it's got that spot right there that looks like it's designed to hold your tweezers. As you can see now that the gun's hot, it goes a lot faster. If you go too long, it melts it too much and it doesn't have a raised up image, which it can still be pretty, but it's not as pretty as doing it right. So just make sure you move it along. And then once you think you have it everywhere, kind of tilt it. That looks pretty good. And then just grab your saying. Super important when you do sentiments that you make sure that you have heated it all. Otherwise, you'll have a silent night, holy night, as it brushes off the powder. And you don't want that to happen. So now we're going to take, you can leave it just like this. Because look, this is pretty. So if it gets to be, it's the first week in December and your cards aren't done, just skip this next step. But it really does kind of take it up to the next level. But that looks pretty. And you could probably, I would, like if you're not going to color it, maybe try doing this on white. And then maybe mounting the card on the gray. The church might show a little bit more if you're not going to do this next step if you stamp it on white. Again, you can try copper powder on soft suede. The options, endless. I'm going to use my Stella because, you know, it's Christmas. You got to use some shimmery ink, right? Start with Shaded Spruce just because it's what's on top. Take your pad together and squish it. If you don't have the pads because you're new, you can get refills, but I only used 4 colors. So it's a nice beginner option. And there are 4 colors that you'll come back and use lots and lots because brown, green, yellow, and gray. So I've got my brown. I'm just going to take it, and you want to be careful because this will paint the top of the embossing powder. And we're really just trying to get the images that are kind of recessed in there. We want those to be what are getting our ink. So that's just pulling the ink from the top. And just adding some here in the middle. And when you get the embossing powder, it comes in a metallic. So with the metallic, you would get the copper, the silver, and the gold. So you would have all those options. I just had, at least, it was a long time ago that I started stamping. I didn't even have a heat tool because I had to use a paint stripper because heat tools did not exist. but stamping was not a huge thing. So it wasn't like you had a lot of options on what to buy. So I just made the gold powder work for probably the first at least 6 months a year. And then I added silver and black. I'm going to add just a little bit. And you can see how maybe you can see, if you get on top of the embossing powder, it tints it. With this, I'm going to give it a little brown door. And then the cross on top of the church, I'm also going to make soft suede. And again, any brown would work. And just get that ink off there. Now let's go to our basic gray, which is the same color as the cardstock. And I'm just going to do the church. It will make the church be a little bit darker. And so it just pops a little bit. That's why I think if you, and I know on camera, it's not showing up nearly as well as it does in person. But if you're running out of time or you don't want to color them, then try it on white or maybe even black. And I think the scene will pop a little bit more. Once you put this bit of ink on here, it really gives it a nice vintage kind of feel for your card. And it goes super fast. Now let's do our... I have daffodil because it's laying on the table from another project. I did not have to stand up to go get any of these colors. And I'm kind of lazy. I don't have any scrap paper here. So for this, I'm going to add just a little bit so it looks like there's some lights on in the church. Just kind of brush it right over the top of those windows. Super fast. Now the trees are the only thing that take any kind of time. And it's, again, because you want to keep as much of the ink in the little recessed panels as you can. I went with shaded spruce because it was laying on my table. Old olive would be pretty. Evening evergreen would be pretty. So when you first start, some of these branches are kind of wider than the other ones. So I get the darker ink off on those. And then I just keep going until I get the smaller ones. And you don't have to get every branch. Here we go. So I'll try to get some close-up pictures on my website so you can kind of see that. You know, it's a little bit harder to see on camera than it is in person. I'm going to take my little tag. And again, remember, I want it to be a tiny little tag. I don't want to cover up any of the paper that I don't have to. So I'm just going to hand trim it. It's going to go on the back of those snowflakes, which is going to kind of help if it's not completely straight. Leave a little bit of an end on the silent. And then we're going to make this straight here. And don't stress about this. You're just making a little banner. It doesn't have to be perfect. Banners in real life often are not perfect. They can be blowing in the breeze. Now I'm going to go ahead and assemble this card because the next step takes some drying. And obviously on the video, we don't have time for it to dry. So I'm going to use the silver twine. It comes with silver and gold. So if you're doing a metallic option, you would have both as you switch over. I would use the snowflake ones that are the flocked with the gold powder or the black powder, and then do all the silver ones with the holographic. So I've doubled that over. I gave myself a nice generous piece because the twine can be a little bit hard. You have to get a nice knot in it so it doesn't come untied. So this will just give me some to work with. I can do a bow if I want. The twine kind of, and I am a good ribbon tire, so that's why I'm giving myself generous, because the twine, even for me, because it just comes untied. It's twine. It's, you know, meant to hold tags on your packages and stuff. But it looks really pretty on this card, so we're going to make it work. So you can see I did a half a knot, and now I'm doing another, and sometimes this just comes untied. And I need to get it around here, so I also have this. Hold it good and tight. Hold your paper down so it's not curling the paper. Got it. The first time I did it, and see, it's going to pull that back up, but once we get it on the card, it's right. We have our curly cues we can work with. Now we know that our church is going to go right here. So I'm going to add the bulk of the adhesive there. The seal, the nice thing about it, if you use some of our older adhesives, they always show through. The seal is clear, so it doesn't. You just don't want to use a lot. So now I'm just going to tack down these 4 corners. And then that's going to keep that inside. See it? Now it lays flat. So that's a little tip with working with the twine, especially if you're doing it on something where this wasn't stable. I'm just going to turn these off. But seriously, the twine's inexpensive. I would rather throw this away than spend 10 minutes trying to tie it because I gave myself a short piece. Now we're going to take our Pearlized enamel effects. And I am going to always get the first dab out on. In my class, we'll come up with some other ways to use them. I keep using them the way they're intended because I don't want to give you, I need to save my good ideas for my class. But this is how you basically use them. And it comes in a package of red, white, and black. I'm going to start with my dots. So you can see this stamp has all the little dots in it, right? So I'm just going to add, and I'm going to do fewer on this than I did on my first one. On my first one, I covered every last dot. This time I'm going to be a little less, just going to get these giant ones. Partly for time, and partly because it looks like my church is in a blizzard on the second one. I mean, on the first card I made. So when you squeeze these out, they do come out with like a little, I call it the Dairy Queen top, you know, the little cone. But as they sit here, that goes away. I don't know that you can see the dots on camera. But this time, like there's a whole bunch right here. I'm not going to get them all this time. I'm going to let some of them be gray. I could go back later and fill it in with Stella. And then they do go over the top of the trees. There's some down here on the ground. Like they're everywhere. And I'll show you on my first card. But when I was done, I was like, yeah, that's not a silent night, holy night. That is get the salt out because we're going to be snowed in tomorrow. So I decided you don't notice it as much until you put snowflakes on top of all of them. And I'm like, well, that's a lot of snowflakes. Plus, this also saves you time, right? So I think that looks pretty good. We have the hint of snow. You can see it behind it. And then I'll show you the difference. And you can decide, do you want a blizzard or do you want softly, gently falling snow? Now I'm just going to take this. The first card I made, I did add the Snowfall Accents puff paint. And then it was the different color than this. So I put some of this on top. And I was like, if I'm going to just use this, I might as well just use this instead of doing 2. So you want to make sure that you don't have anything floating. So get it all the way up to where the church is. And then just kind of take your tip and swirl it around. Just like that. Then you want to make sure, I'm just going to use my fingers because I still have my pajama bottoms on. I'm dressed from the top. How many of us do that? Especially when you work from home. But you don't want that to dry up there, so just wipe it off. And then you can wipe it on something. My pajama pants are kind of like my towel. So now we have this. See, we're almost done. That just needs time to dry. So it's important when you do this card and you're done that you have someplace to lay these. I think we're going to do this at my in-person camp this weekend, or this week. So this is one of those ones that after they do it, I'll have to take them all and set them aside. Now this end that we left flat, just put it all the way to the flat part of the card. Now see, we haven't lost it because when I put this on, a lot of our beautiful paper gets covered up. And the beautiful paper, all that hologram is part of the star of the show. Now this one, if you're doing this, leave that there, let it dry, and then do this next step. But I don't want to have a not finished card for you to see. So I'm down to almost the edge of these. So this will be the easiest way for me to stick it on here. Plus it kind of balances out the knot that's in here. So see here, this one doesn't take any extra embellishments because we're letting the enamel pearls be the embellishments. Super fast, super pretty. I'm always thinking when I design Christmas cards, you want yours, whether other people stick it on the fridge, they put it on their mantle, you want your card to really be like, oh wow, who sent you this one, right? Because if we're gonna go to the time and trouble to hand make our cards, we want them to be impressive. I have to be careful because I want that my little knot to get in. I'll make sure it's straight. The nice thing also about doing it this way is if I get it on here and it's not straight, I'll be able to pull it off later because it's just stuck on dimensionals, and I'm not going to stick it hard. Of course, the church doesn't have any. So super easy. This is just straight up pearlized effects. The other one, if you don't want the gray to show through, then start with a coat of the Snowfall Accents Puff Paint. Puffs it all up, and then you don't have to use as much as these. But I've made a ton of cards with this so far, and you can't even tell that any's gone. So don't worry about wasting it. So here is Softly Gently Falling Snow. Over here is a little bit more of a blizzard. So this covered up every last little dot that I could see. So it's a little bit more. It's been, and see that went into the there while it was drying. So now my ribbon is stuck in my paint. I think I can pull it out. Let's see if it's dry for you. So that's touch dry. That's still damp because that's a thick coat, and you can see the puff paint underneath it. I think it's an unneeded step. It was one less thing, especially if you're a new beginner stamper, that I didn't think that you had to have. It looks a little bit more snowy, I guess. So it's kind of up to you. If you want to use this, you just carefully squirt it on and then heat it with the low setting on your heat tool. If you're interested in doing my online class, just hop over to my website. You can go down below the video and I will have the link there to my website. You can also, when you're at my website, sign up for my email list, and then that way you always are abreast of everything that's going on. I will catch you back here later this week. Bye.